Hello, hello. Okay. So, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I know it's not easy, like it's kind of minus 20 ish, so it's not easy to be here. So, thank you so much for coming. Sorry about the last month. I had some personal problems, and also Anders has like a really newborn, really nice, and yeah, it was really complicated to us. But yeah, we are here now, and again, thank you. And I would like to call our first speaker, Dennis, to tell us about Figma. So thank you so much, Dennis.
Thank you, Julio. Hello, everyone. Okay. Hello, everyone, online and here. My name is Dennis. Today, I will talk about prototype with Figma variables and conditionals. I would like to know about you guys, the audience, engineers. Okay, engineers, designers, one. Okay. Uh, I know that this kind of content is not directly from to the engineers itself, but I think we will enjoy because it's close to reason of programming, very, very easy way, okay? Okay, I am Dennis. I have 20 years in technology field. I was a developer, a front-end engineer in the past. 5 years as product designer. I have degree and master's degree in computer science. And now I work for an HR company. I work in a product, I don't know if you know, but it's ATS. It's a software for selecting you guys for new positions. I used to live here. I am from Brazil, but this photo is from Maceió. Maceió is a beautiful city in northwest of Brazil, like a paradise, very warm. I like to complain. Then I was complaining about hot weather, but now I'm complaining about cold weather. Our agenda is what's a variable in Figma and the concept, as some practice, what is a conditional, some practice, some real use cases, and some reference about the subject. Okay, what's a variable? I know engineers know what's about, but I'll explain, okay, for everyone. Imagine this box, and in this box you can put a lot of our objects or different types, different contents. But in Figma, we have 3 types, or 4 types, sorry. We can put something in this box of type color, string, number, or Boolean value that has true or false values. Imagine this box, like this box calls username, is of type string, and we can put on this the name John. In Figma, for example, have color variable. We can set hexadecimal code and apply to our design. Is not the best way to do that, but also we have the option to reference the variable in any other variable, and we can apply to design. Like if I change the color itself of the brand because the company changed the brand, this design reflect that, but I don't need to change the color brand variable. Okay, let's check in Figma. This talk is kind of workshop, you know. Here is a file for Figma community. It's very known about everyone design. But let's check it out. Here I have a web page from like a grocery or fresh food, fresh fruits, and we want to add some behavior In traditional way, without variables, we can copy all this frame, and so many times you can add some simulations. But here, all the things will happen through variables and conditions. In Figma, let's start with the colors. Right here in Design app, we have local variables and we have collections like folders. For create a variable, I will create a variable of color, but we have seen number, string, boolean, but in this case it's color. And I will create some colors, right, for the brand. Okay, here we create 3 variables for the brand, and I will create 2 or 3 for a grayscale because we have text and shadows and something like that. Here I have created the in grayscale, the lighted one and the darkest one. For organize that, I can select all this and create a group naming colors slash brand, and I create a subgroup. For the others, okay. It's a good process to organize like that because it's more semantic. We can apply all these variables in our design, but it's not a good way to do that. We can use tokens. Tokens in Figma is a concept. When you apply a basic thing like these primitives to another variable more semantic, like surface or text, something more reusable. Right now, you can rename this collection to primitives. And create another one for tokens. You have seen that in the primitives collection, we have the value itself. But here we can create a color that calls text primary. And instead of a value itself, we can choose another variable. Okay? Right. I could do a lot of things right here, but it's like slowing, but I have all this. I have done all this, like all great scale. The brand colors. I have a lot of variables of number to define spacing, to define radius, okay? But in my tokens collection, I have more semantic things. The surface primary is the color of the page, is color gray 15. Surface secondary or my text style is my text primary, text secondary, okay, all the things link it to another primitive. But let's see in our page. What's the difference about applying variables in our styles or styles itself in Figma? If I apply styles, when I need to, change the color of the text in all page, I need to pick up all the elements and change the value, and it's probably I will forget something. But my text here and other elements is linked to my variable text primary. So if I change the value of text primary for another color, like, I don't know, this, all my design get this, because it's not about style, it's about variable. It's a very good thing for not create a great variety of styles, grades, a lot of grays, 60, 100, or 500, because you have a text color. Okay, let's back to the presentation, because colors, we passed the color to explain you how variables are created in Figma and apply to the Figma file. But what is a conditional? A conditional, this is special for engineers because you have to know that. A conditional is to make if else in Figma. I know it's a basic thing in programming, but in Figma it's a wow design. Last thing about Mary. Mary is wishing to go to the beach, and the condition is it's sunny. If it's sunny, Mary goes to the beach. If not sunny, Mary stayed home and read a book. In algorithm way, something like that. If weather equals sunny, true, go to the beach. False, read a book. End of the algorithm. We have, on this situation, card total is a number, a variable of number. It can receive a number itself, of course, an operation, or operation without variables. Or if else, something like that. Card total, if card total is equal zero, empty card is true, else empty card is false. We can see now how can apply that in our Figma file. Okay, we want that when the user hit the button at the cart, the amount available decrease and the basket is full, turn full. Okay, the first thing we have to do is tell the Figma that this component will be manipulated by a behavior, an action with a variable. This amount, this number, we can select this specific item and associate with a variable right here. Apply variable. I forgot to show you guys. Our collection proper is this one, product interaction I have created. Amount available, it's available, has card button text. I will explain all this. But for now, I use this variable that have the full value of 4. Okay, let's select this guy and apply amount. If nothing happens, okay. But if I change the value of 4 right here for 8, the interface reflect directly. Okay, let's change to 4. Now, the behavior I want is when I hit this button, this amount is decreasing. So I can add this behavior and this button itself, but I can see that this button have a behavior itself, is a hover state. If I do this association with this button, probably will not work because the hover state is on this place. But if you go to the component itself, like here we have this guy. This guy has two states, idle and hover. We will apply the change right here in hover state. Right here, we can add an interaction of click where my action is set a variable. And the variable we need to change is amount available. 2, I can do it directly, but if we hit another time, it's not working because it's like not operation right now. But we can assign like that amount -1. Okay, every time I hit this button, amount decrease 1. Let's check. Okay.
Just like so like no. So you want this behavior to be irrespective if you have a hover.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when you code this component, it doesn't matter that hover is happening or not. But in Figma, if you have an in state, the other state is hiding. You cannot access this button in the full state. So it's like the way to do that in Figma, is not like in programming. It's not the same reasoning. I respond you today? Yeah. Yeah. This is a problem. It's a semantic problem, but sometimes I prefer take off the hover state of the button because it's very fast and attach directly in the button. For me, it's working. In this case, not, but I can do that in this way. No, no at all. We can do this here. I can take off this hover and attach the event right here. On the click, we can set a variable, amount -1. Okay. Yeah. Is a limitation. Yeah, is a limit. Man, I know it's semantically wrong, but in this Figma we have this limitation because if I have sometimes to add a tooltip in hover state and add a click on this component. I use other events to not while hovering, but I can do it. I can do that when mouse enter, when mouse leave, and I control it by variables. It's a more realistic way to do that when you have states and clicks. Welcome. Okay. In this case, we will ignore the hover state and do right here. Let me exclude that. Let's check that if it's happening. Okay, it's happening. But we have a problem because the amount available must be greater than 0, right? Because we have a store. To do this, we can input not a set variable but a conditional. I think is the most fun part. We can add another action called check if else, is our conditional, and set if a rule, if amount available is greater than 0, I can drag and drop this conditional to here. Okay, let's check if working. Okay, 0 stops. Nice, but I don't want to be. I don't want this guy. It's appearing when I go to 0. So I can apply a visibility status associated with this condition. To do that, I have another variable. It's available right here. That it's a Boolean property, a Boolean variable. So you can check, you can apply this variable and appearance of the component. Like here, we have this kind of behavior, but with the right button of the mouse, we have these guys that have Boolean values is available. Now it's true. If I change, I can see the interface responded that. Okay. And the line 2, I will apply to this line. Visibility. Okay. It's available. Okay. So in our button, we can set another variable when amount available is greater than 0. Set variable amount to, no, not this one, sorry, is available to false. No, sorry, it's not like that. Where it's equal to 0 is another conditional. Okay. If amount available is equals to 0, set is available to false. Okay. Let's check it out. Okay. Yeah, it worked too. It could be. Let's see. Okay. It disappeared. Now I can set the basket the basket here, the cart, to we have something there. To do that, we have another one, another variable boolean has cart. In this time, we can we go to set a state of the a variant of the component, not visibility. So if you go to the component, the basket button, we have has cart false and has cart true for these states, these variants. So we can do that. Oh, sorry. Like that. In the instance, we have this property of the component, right? Right here, we can apply has cart. And if I hit this button in the first conditional, amount of minus one, but we can set another one to has cart to true. Let's check it out. Add cart. Okay, change it. If I don't use all variables and conditionals right here, I probably will get another copy of all the page and things make things like in prototype mode linking the pages. It's easy, but it's not perform. You can do all your things you have in mind in the same page. And the last thing we have to do is turn this button in this, I forgot the name, unavailable. We have another variant of that component. So we have, for this behavior, we have this guy, card button text is available. It's like a state, right? So right here, we can use the second conditional if the amount available is equals to 0 to set variable text, card button text to unavailable. Okay, is a string. Must be the same text of the property to work. Let's check. Oh, no, doesn't work. Okay, because I forgot to assign this property to a variable. Doesn't work. Okay, when I did that in this component, it worked. But we can see why it's not working. Probably I wrote in not correct way. Is correct? No. So it's correct? Okay. Let's check it out. If doesn't work, oh God, thanks. Sometimes happens, mainly in the talks. Okay. Back to the presentation. I have some real situation that happens to me in my job. Sorry about the text because it's in Portuguese. It's a file that I use in my current job. Here, it's a requisition. I will translate to you, right? Let's check in the Figma. This is a part of requisition. When a recruiter needs to open a position, he needs to approval for stakeholders, like managers. To create that, a client said to us that sometimes he needs to create a requisition with 100 positions. And our component is like, you can add one by one. So I create this case for you set up all the numbers of the position and set the reason. The reason it could be expansion, substitution, other. All the behaviors here are controlled by variables. Why I did that? Because this client, this customer, it was a risk of churn. And yes, we prioritize this, but when I did that and showed to them, we could come down and get the client, and the client create a great confidence in us. So if you see, I can manipulate this guy, and the total positions here just increasing or decreasing by the time I hit this. Okay, if I add another box with different numbers, the number of position is still correct. If I select another reason, substitution, another, all the things is controlled by variables. If I drop this one, the total positions is still correct, and if you drop this one, it's still correct. And I have a restriction that I can do this only a minimum of one position. I can't do 0 only. If I need to tap some value, I can make event for my keypad, like for 53, 53, or 12, right here. And if I change the values is still correct. For the client, is like almost real. And they have confidence to stay with us. And we avoid the churn. Another example is this screen is about requisitions. You start with requisition. We send a requisition to the manager by email. If the user is logged or is not logged, the flows change by a condition, right? I did this, is not in the email, of course, is like a flag. Right here, the user is not logged. So if I access this requisition, I access outside the system, is a link public, a public link. And I can do my decision, like approve or not. If I change here, all these components are making by the variables. If I reset and change this value, user logged, I can do the same way, but I'm logging the system. The screen is another one. So you can apply for interaction design Figma variables in different contexts. If you want to change the flow or change the states or manipulate text, manipulate numbers. The last example I have is a scorecard. It's a tool that we made it for the interviewer when the guy is talking to you, and you know that they take notes, right? This is a tool for them. Okay, this call interview kit and scorecard. I can assign any star, any score, and write a comment. Of course, a comment is like a manipulate the text and manipulate the state of the component, but is a fixed text. But I can change every star to what I want. And in the final here, I can select, for example, for my final decision on this candidate in the interview, if I say no and ask for the assistant, of course, this is simulation. The text generated, not generated because I set it, is based on my condition. No, the text is not recommended this candidate. But if I say yes, or definite yes, strong yes, the text changed to another thing. For usability tests is very rich because when I have applied this test, I could observe the wow moments, the specific resource that they use in a specific moment. It was very close to the reality, very close to the real application. It was very helpful to me, like a researcher, like observer. Okay. To finish my talk, I like to answer and question to you guys why it's so important to use in design Figma variables and conditionals. It's not about because it's cool, because of course it's cool, but it's useful when you need to go that we need to do a good usability test when you to do avoid a churn of a client, or maybe show when the sales team with the sales team or a possible client to show them that you have plans to do that and sometimes close a deal. But of course, the main purpose of using tools like that you empower yourself like a researcher. You can see the interactions almost like real and get some little details that you haven't, all these kind of uh, you know resources like variables and conditionals. You couldn't get these little details, all the reactions of your user. So I finished. Here is a guide to variables in Figma. Is an article from the community. This article that I wrote, Scale Design System Component with Variables, if you have interest, and my LinkedIn. Okay, thank you. If you have any questions.
You have the option to import these variable values,
Yes.
JSON strings to import
yeah.
them.
Yeah, Figma doesn't have this kind of feature naturally, but we have like a plugins. I made that not working very well, but sometimes work.
Okay.
When you transfer, it's not good enough today, but I think you're getting better in the future, naturally by the Figma.
Okay. My second question is about this last feature that you show for us. This is a browser extension?
Yes, it's a browser extension.
Okay.
Oh.
Seriously. There is nothing related to the Google. You don't need to set something inside the Google Meet integration.
We can recognize the URL
Okay.
and get this guy, because in the system you can mark this interview We can create the link there. And when we perceive that has an interview, that we suggest that have an interview kit available to you.
Okay.
But you can use on, like a web page outside this integration, outside the plugin.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you. One does Figma have version control or something as files
Yeah.
change to be able to go back and forth?
Yeah. Figma has a history, like in GitHub, We have, let me see, because the Figma interface changed. I don't know where is right now because the interface changed. But yes, you have like a history, automatic points with automatic, but you can't delimitate the point like a commit.
Okay.
No, you
And-
can restore in some time.
In the history.
Yes.
Okay. And then second question, Figma is pretty new to me. I have a basic idea for it, but how do businesses leverage this for their purposes? Is it for UI mockup specifically, or is there other?
Figma.
Yeah, for what you were showing.
Okay. Are you an engineer or designer?
My background?
Yeah.
Researcher.
Researcher, right? Okay. If I understand, this kind of tool is for UX designers, UI designers, for productivity. So this kind of feature is not for free, is in the business plan. And when we need to do, when you have the best shot, when you have all discovery, you did a lot of interviews, analyzing data, validate your problem, and ideate something. When you have the best shot, I think that is good to deepen down like that, because you're validating your best idea. I don't know if I answer you. Okay. Is that I think it's worth, if you have time, because okay, it's consume time sometimes, okay? But for me, I have background of engineer too, and it's easy to me. But designers, you don't need to know to program, But of course, this kind of feature, you need to study something.
Thanks for the presentation. As far as I understand, these variables and flows gives opportunity to have something more dynamic instead of just different static pages.
Yes,
So
exactly.
question, how does it help for front-end engineers to implement something
nice.
in real applications? I mean, is it more helpful? Like,
Yeah. Let's talk about handoff process, right? Everyone here, as a designer engineer, you have this moment of refine a task, understand what the designers did. And when I use this kind of feature, I can do a handoff and in a very short way, because we have a little screens, some screens, 3 screen maximum. And always I recommend play. Engineer, you can select the mainframe and play and observe the behavior that I thought. The main thing about handoff is make it clear what I think to you, engineer. What the expect behavior. When we think about that, we can sometimes prevent error status, like 404 or 500 states. Or we can prevent, okay, engineers, I like to talk with engineers because always they talk to me like, okay, if this thing happens, when I do this kind of thing with variables, it helped me to understand better before I talk to the engineer, But when I talk to them, it's very helpful to understand what I expect, what they feel, what they think about this behavior, this possible behavior. It's easier to discuss when you have this kind of behavior, Okay.
Hey, nice presentation. I was just kind of wondering, like, it seems like there's a lot of duplication with something like this, and I'm wondering what kind of feedback you get from the engineering teams when you hand it off, because it seems like you're kind of duplicating their logic in two places, and that might be really helpful for the engineers. Like, I'm just actually really curious the feedback you get when you give something like this to them.
Okay. We have both sides, because by the time you have some short screens, sometimes I need to expose all the thing because sometimes something is hidden. Sometimes I need to create a spec aside, showing all the things and document all the behaviors to get more clear, because in the design mode you can see only in prototype when you can play, It's the fun thing about this is we have a short deliver, very straight to the point, but you need more specification about what happened without play,
Yeah, so you mean like without the variables, you would need more specification?
Yeah, but the variables is not so important to engineers, The important is observe the behavior, playing, and the documentation in design. We have to do that because sometimes we have a component and visibility false, and we need to expose and explain why this there, or the business rule around this component.
Okay. I guess, yeah, just the last question then would be, is there a way to actually show the engineer all the changes that you have without them having to go click around the UI and kind of guess what's interactable?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Well, like, let's say you were to give me like the shopping cart page, right?
Okay.
How do I know what elements on that page you've made interactable or that change state? Because usually, like, I would get like a big document with all the different specs in it, and I'm just wondering, how that usually works with them. Like, do they have to go and click around everything, and especially once you get like with the numbers and they're decreasing?
Yes. Yeah, I think the documentation is needed to explain that, but I think it's very important to get a moment when the designer explains to the engineer, not asynchronously, because I have to show you how it works and we can discuss together it's properly working like expected. I think if I send all the things to you asynchronously, I need to get all the documentation aside, It's not like you discover it by yourself. Okay, I can do that because the design needs to be clear itself without explanation. If you know the task, if you know the problem, if you know what problem we are solving right now, I can feel that my design is already to be discovered by you, to you. You can play and something like that, because I already tested the design. I know the design is clear, it's usable, it's easy to understand. So if you don't understand, it's my problem.
So you're kind of using the engineers as QA testers then?
Yeah,
yeah.
If you don't
I'm just
understand,
like,
I have a problem.
Like on the left, like you see how there's like layers and stuff like that there in Figma.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if there's a way to kind of see a list of the things you've created.
Okay.
Like, you know, like
Oh.
how you had the available amount, like decrementing by 1 each time the button was pressed. I'm just wondering if
Okay.
there's like a place where you can
Let
see
me
like a global view of all those things. Because this is really cool, and I could totally see this being useful, especially if there's something like that.
let me show you an example that I did myself, right? This guy is what I show you. I like to do that, like a lot of arrows, and sometimes I like to explain the rules like that in some part of the component that have a behavior. Okay, so I can do this in the flow, and I have a special section for the elements all expanded, all the expected behaviors, like arrow behaviors.
Okay.
You know, I know it's not like a document, it's more interactive. It's my way to organize a document, and I guarantee that always I have a moment with the engineer to show, to explain why this solution solves a problem. Because for me, the main question is, the design thing solve the real problem? For me, it's more important. And for me, in this moment with you, like engineer, I have to explain you how to solve a problem. How I thought this kind of thing is solve a problem. It's clear for you. You can play, you can question, and sometimes probably you get a thing that I couldn't perceive. It's okay. We talk and improve the design, because as an engineer, you is a part of the design too.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you. That's good to know. So you just you can walk it through with them, and it's a really quick way to you can just click this and show them it does that, and so on. Hey.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I get it.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying. So you kind of would interactively walk through this with them,
Okay.
and it makes it quick. Hey.
Okay. Here I have in a prototype mode, I have these flows. The first one, the second one. The first one is what my first version I tested, and the second one here I can select this guy and play. It's all about that. I don't know if it's about that.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
kind of what I was wondering, was how you would
Okay.
show them that. Yeah.
So
Thanks.
I can do this. Okay. Right here, you can see the variables because it's like in code, you know. But I can explain to you what is happening. In here, doesn't matter if I select this guy and put the behavior, because I think you probably don't get this reasoning to the code. You understand the situation and code it itself by yourself and on your way, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
Did I respond you?
Oh, yeah. You
Oh,
definitely did.
sure.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
And I know Figma for having worked with it because I used to work with a designer who left Adobe XD
Ah.
for Figma. So my question is, maybe I should ask him, but as the point is here, differences between Figma and Adobe XD,
Okay.
because I know Figma has a free version. I don't know if Adobe also has a free version, but why should a designer leave Adobe XD for Figma right now?
Okay. Okay, I can respond that because I was a big fan of Adobe XD. I started that. but Adobe XD, I think, stopped to get releases, and the community of design in the world went to the Figma. Okay, everybody is the Figma because Figma it's online. Figma it's available to the product manager, the engineer. I don't have to install nothing in Adobe XD. Yes, you need to install, and it's not good for work with other people, like other designers, the same file and the same time. It's not good, you know. I love Adobe XD, but in this aspect, it's not so good. I know Adobe XD has great features that Figma hasn't yet, but why everybody is in Figma? Because Figma it's an environment for everyone in product team. You know, engineers can see in dev mode. Like I like to do that when I have event. I like to map the events like that. Event, interview, key, job description. I like to do that for the engineers to map where I can put a mixed panel event, because I have my metrics, I have my dashboards. I want to know how people are interact with the product, what features were or more search it, use it, you know. For this reason, I can send you a link and without business plan, and you can see all the things like engineer. You can see if I'm I am in outside of the dev mode. I can see like a designer. I can see like a PM. You know, Adobe XD is not like a community friendly, like community of designers, of course, but community of product, because we work together with stakeholders, with other people. Sorry?
Yeah, if I get what you told, the main point is that Figma is more collaborative
Exactly.
than Adobe XD.
Exactly. Is the point.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nope. Okay. So thank you so much, Dennis. It
Thank
was
you.
really nice.
Hope
So
you enjoy.
now we're going to have like a 5 minutes break. I mean, you have some waters right there, so just pick up one if you want. And we're going to return to the next talk about Python. So, yeah.
I'm going to start off with a brief history of Python. Python was created by Guido van Rossum, who's a Dutch programmer, and he unveiled it to the world in 1991. With a team of developers beside him, he released Python version 1.0 in 1994. In 1995, because everybody was really impressed with how clear his vision was and how he could articulate it, Guido was dubbed benevolent dictator for life of the Python project. In 2000, the first Python enhancement proposal was created. Python enhancement proposals are the mechanisms by which the development team improve and enhance the actual Python language. Also in the year 2000, Python 2.0 was released. And in 2008 came Python 3.0. In 2018, something very unfortunate happened. Guido approved a PEP that was very controversial. And some people in the Python development community took to social media and said some very nasty things about him. So he decided that he would step down as benevolent dictator for life, saying that he didn't feel he had the support of the community anymore. The moral of the story is, dictators are people too. Be kind to them. Well, that left a bit of a leadership void. So the remaining part of the team struck a 5-person steering committee to continue on with the leadership of this project. And that's proved successful because in 2024, back last month, October, Python 3.13 was released. Now, if you've ever actually looked at the PEPs, most of them are pretty dry reading and generally aren't much interest to the world, but there are 5 that I've picked out that everybody should be aware of. We'll start with the first one. That's the Zen of Python. Before I go any further, I would like to point out that, like DOS, I am interruptible, so if you have any questions, please raise your hand. Yeah, question. Can't hear you. Oh, that was about something called the walrus operator. It was an operator that would allow you to assign a value to a variable and at the same time return that value. Some people said it was a great idea, very useful. There were some good use cases for it. And some people said, no, that really makes things complex, which violates some of the principles I'm getting into in a minute. And it was this one really stupid argument that really caused Guido to leave. So anyway, Team Peters captured 20 aphorisms from Guido about the philosophy that's guided the development of Python, but only 19 have been really remembered. So I'm going to pick out 14 of them. First, beautiful is better than ugly. Explicit is better than implicit. Simple is better than complex, but complex is still better than complicated. Readability counts. And we'll get into that later on tonight. There are special cases, but they aren't special enough to break rules, although practicality beats purity. Errors should never pass silently unless they're explicitly silent. Would anyone like to explain what that means? Yes.
Okay. If a user tells the system not to surface the errors, explicitly silenced?
Something like that, yes. If you're dealing with a routine or a function that does raise an exception or an error, either handle it or pass it on to a routine above, but generally don't ignore it. In the face of ambiguity, refuse the temptation to guess. There should be one, and preferably only one, obvious way of doing things, although that may not be obvious at first unless you're Dutch. If the implementation is hard to explain, it's a bad idea. And if it's easy to explain, maybe a good idea. Now, does this back and forth of cascading set of aphorisms remind you of another software development philosophy? Yeah.
The Linux founder, he said, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. Linus Torvald. Yeah. Any other philosophies?
Maybe the Agile Manifest?
That's what I'm looking for, the Agile Manifest. Where some things are valued more than others, not saying that they don't have value, but they just have less value than something else. Thank you. Moving on to the next PEP. PEP 8 is probably the most complex PEP and also the most widely known. This could easily be a 2-hour presentation on its own with a 10-minute intermission. I'm not going to bore you with the details. Instead, I'm going to bore you with some highlights. In the preamble, it's mentioned that a foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds. And the next line here, code is read much more often than it is written. That could very easily be the 20th of the 20 aphorisms from PEP 20. Also worth noting is that consistency with a style guide is important. Consistency within a project is more important. And consistency within one module or function is the most important. Why? Let's see.
It makes reading easier. Like if it's inconsistent, like reading in different language, like start of a function in Java and it finished in the Scala. And the bigger the smaller the block of text, the harder it's to deal with the inconsistency.
Exactly. When things are inconsistent, they are difficult to work with. Which brings us to the next line, know when to be inconsistent. Yes, it is possible to break the rules and get away with it. So the style guide goes on to explain a lot of things like code layout, 4 spaces for indentation, don't use tabs. Originally, they said set a maximum line length of 79 characters, but they kind of relent a little bit. They know that some people like to have longer lines, so they say, okay, maximum 99, but no more than that. But curiously, they also said that long blocks of code like docstrings and comments should only have a length of 72 characters. There are other sections here dealing with comments. Comments that contradict your code really are worse than no comments at all. Why? Yep, over here. Okay, hang on.
It's difficult to, let's say, solve a bug or something when you're revisiting it. And if your code says it is supposed to do, let's say, feature A, but your comment says that you've taken care of feature B there. So there's a contradiction there. It's going to take some time off in solving that thing.
That's right. So if you read a comment, that quickly tells you what the piece of code is going to do. But if it leads you down the wrong path, you're going to end up in trouble. Who here has dealt with incorrect comments? Good. You know not to do that. Thank you. There's a whole other section here on naming conventions about when to use lowercase with underscores, camel case. By the way, who here likes using snake case for everything? Yeah, I don't either. I'm more of a fan of camel case.
I mean, depends. When I'm working with Ruby, I usually go for a snake case, but when I'm working for, like with Java, for example, I'm going to the camel case. So that's kind of Depends. I know it's like a company convention, so I have to follow.
That's
yeah.
exactly there. So here we have a case of consistency. Now, one of the takeaways here I want to give you is that creating a style guide should be done early in the team formation phase. Don't wait until you've got a year of development under your belt. The more team members you have, each one's going to have their own opinions on how to do things, and you're going to have inconsistent code all over the place. And you don't need to agree with a style guide. You don't even have to like it. You just have to abide by it. Now, Python is a dynamically typed language, which means if you try to pass a number to a function which is expecting a string, it'll try and convert it to a string. But there are times when you need to make things a little more explicit. Type hints are the way of doing that. Type hints are a variation on function annotations. Hang on just a second here. All right. Function annotations actually have no effect on code execution, but they are additional information for the programmer. Type hints will probably never be mandatory. And type hints will help linting tools like PyLint let you know if you're passing a wrong type of value to a function. I've got some examples here. Here I got a function that has no hints at all, no annotations. This is an improvement, and we have, at least here we've got a variable. We kind of know what it's for, and we know what this function is going to return. But type hints actually specify the type of variable or the type of argument that's being expected, and what the function is actually going to return. Type hints can generally be classified into two types. There are the simple ones where it's just a one-word description like string or int. But you can also have compound types. For example, here, there's an argument that can be either an integer or a float. If you have a class, you can just specify the class as a type hint. Moving on, one of the other things in PEP 8 was a mention about docstrings, but it didn't really specify what to put in a docstring. So PEP 257 gives a bit more detail. Docstrings, as most Python developers know, start and end with 3 quotation marks. They can be one line or multi-lines. The first line should be a single line executive summary using the imperative voice. In other words, it's written as a command. Instead of saying, this function does X, it's written as a command as do X. The subsequent lines in the docstring give a little more detail. Now, PEP 257 doesn't really mandate what to include as a detail, but it does make suggestions. For module docstrings, you should keep a list of everything that's exported with a one-line description of what's being exported. Full details for what is actually being exported can be with a thing. Clear? Okay. Function docstring should summarize behavior, describe arguments, return values, and list the side effects. So here we've got a point where if there's an exception, this is the object that gets raised. Yeah, question.
For function, actually, why not make first line name of a function? So if you want something more to say about like what this function going to do, warn people not to be rude to a minority, make it the name of a function. Why? Yeah. Like it should be same. There shouldn't be different line for it.
Sorry, say that.
So in your example, you have never be rude. And then your command, where you have an executive summary of a function, warn people not to be rude to a minority. Make it the name of a function. Warn people not to be rude to a minority, then you don't need a command.
Yeah.
Like why?
You could do that, yes. There's no reason to not do that.
So basically, if you have something like to summarize your function, make it the name of your function. If you need to put it in a command, you're doing something wrong.
You could do that, but the executive summary is a bit more detailed. Gives is written in English.
You can write function name in English.
You can, if you put the underscores.
But if it needs an explanation, then why not make the name of a function longer? Why not make it like warn people not to be rude to a minority? So if you think that it's worth putting in a summary this like text, maybe your name of function have to be longer. Because if we have some like ideas that it should be shorter, then name function 1. If you already name it like never be rude, but omitting some details, like how do you pick, like then make it like long enough to be explainable.
For a lot of people, it's a matter of simplicity. So instead of having the same function, warn people not to be rude to a minority, every line of your code, you can just say, never be rude.
But this one specifies to a minority, and it's like
Yeah.
a warning. So out of name of a function, I don't know, it would be a warning. It's like make a statement never be rude, but like, what does it mean? Like warn people never to be rude to a minority. Actually, it's a great name, and since the first argument is minority, so the name of a function should be warn people not to be rude to, and then minority to whom you like warning them not to be rude to.
It can be done. It's largely up to the programmer's discretion.
Okay,
Yeah.
Let's continue.
Yeah. And there's also talk about what to put into class docstring, public members, and any directions for people who intend to inherit this class. Some important points to note is that docstrings are for code users. Those are the people who will be using your code, whereas comments are for maintenance programmers. Do all functions and classes need docstrings? Someone said no. Why not?
It's like the example. It's like the example he gave. If it's never be rude to, and then it takes a minority as an argument, you can rewrite that in a comment, but then you just have bad comments. What if you change the name of the function? Or it's almost just worse. So like if it's simple enough, there's no point putting anything. And like you're just gonna restate what's obvious already. That's my opinion, anyhow.
That's true, but that's not quite the answer I'm looking for. Suppose you have a module that's one exported function and have 5 supporting functions. You wouldn't need to write docstrings for the supporting functions. You just need the docstring for the exported function that the code user is going to use. You can use comments on those 5 supporting functions so that the maintenance programmer who's coming afterwards is going to add to or modify your code. Now, one of the things that this PEP 257 doesn't do is specify markup. And plain text documentation is often inadequate. Developers have clamored for a canonical markup language. So the Python Steering Council struck a committee to come up with some recommendations. And they rejected a whole bunch. The first one they rejected was XML SMGL. And if you look at it, you think it would make sense. A documentation tool can just pick this out and create an HTML file all beautifully formatted. But the committee decided that it was verbose, too difficult to type, and was really cluttered in the source code. They also looked at text. They also said that it was not very easy to write and not easy for the uninitiated to read. Show of hands, who here is familiar with text? A few people, but again, not many. They also looked at Perl. Perl has had its plain old documentation style for a while, but they said it was, it takes after Perl itself in terms of readability. So they rejected that one too. They looked at the Java doc style. But they also noticed that, yes, you do have these extra tags here, but a lot of it still relies on HTML, so it has the same readability issues as HTML. One did actually make its way to a PEP, and that was PEP 216, called structured text. And here you can see we've got indentation and some markup here. But one of the things it doesn't include, for example, is there's no provision for a horizontal rule. So structured text was really too limited as a canonical markup guide. This PEP was actually withdrawn because the committee settled on PEP 287, restructured text. Restructured text actually had its roots in structured text, but was a complete revamp and a rewrite. This is what restructured text looks like now. So we don't have any indentation here. We've got our horizontal rules back. We still have our hyperlinks. They chose this one over the other ones because it did have all the features that all the developers were looking for to mark up their code. Plus, it's extensible. Now, does anyone recognize some of this markup here? Sorry?
Some of it's similar to Markdown.
Exactly, Markdown. So some of you might be asking, well, why didn't they just choose Markdown? Markdown didn't make its debut until 2 years after this PEP had been accepted. And the Python community wasn't going to wait for another markup language to come along. So they grabbed it and ran with it, and they've worked with it ever since. Some things about restructured text is that it is the most widely used markup language in the Python development community. It is powerful, but it's also complex and takes a bit of time to learn. The documentation tool that works with restructured text is called Sphinx. But if you don't want to learn restructured text, I've got some good news for you. Markdown is actually being recognized as an alternative, and there are documentation generator tools that will work with it, such as mkdocs and pdoc. You can also go with the Google style guide for Python. It's all plain text, but if you follow their format, then a tool like pdoc will make it pretty, add hyperlinks, and so on. My personal favorite, though, is the NumPy SciPy format. That blends restructured text with Google style. It gives me the simplicity and readability of the Google style, plus I have the flexibility and power of restructured text when I need it. There is a plugin for Sphinx that will work with this format. One other format that bears mentioning is called Epitext. And that was based on the Java doc and was widely adopted early on before anybody had come up with any markup language. Unfortunately, it hasn't really aged well as the Python language has evolved over time. You will see it in some legacy code, but it is generally now considered to be a legacy markup format. I'd recommend that when you choose one of these formats as a team, do so early on in the team formation phase. Changing them afterwards can be difficult, but there is a tool called Pymint that will convert between the different formats. Well, that brings us to what's in Python's future. Well, your guess is as good as mine right now, but reading some of the open and deferred PEPs, I've noticed a couple of things. One is that the global interpreter lock is going to be optional in the CPython implementation. Who here can tell me what the global interpreter lock is?
It's what makes Python really bad. Lots of stuff. Yeah, it's just like it's a lock that doesn't let multiple threads actually run at once. So if you have two threads, they can't run at the same time. They have to switch the context. So you have to actually have different processes to have both two things running at once.
Exactly. It just allows one Python thread to run at a time. So if you have a multi-threaded Python application, it will perform no better. It'll perform no better on a quad-core computer than it will on a single-core computer. The steering committee has kind of relented now. This feature is starting to make its way out. It was in Python 3.13, which was released back in October, conditionally. The steering committee has reserved the right to phase this in slowly or roll it back entirely. Now, something else that was recently introduced is the just-in-time compiler. Recent benchmarks for the CPython implementation have shown modest improvements so far, but it's just in its infancy. They expect more improvements to come as time goes by. And remember I was telling you about Guido stepping down as benevolent dictator for life? Well, in recent years, he's come out of the shadows and now holds the title Benevolent Dictator for Life Emeritus. He's back active in the Python development discussion forums, so that's good news. Any questions so far? Yeah.
Is there any PEP for interface files? Because I actually don't want to see any comments when I develop my code, but if I export it as a library, I definitely want to provide some form of documentation. But I don't want to mix my code with comments. So if there ever happens, like F#, I believe a Camel does this. Basically, have an interface file if you want to explain something to people who are going to use your code.
I know it's possible to work with compiled C code, but beyond that, I really don't know. I'm sorry.
A quick comment on that. Some recent IDEs will hide these comments from your eyes for your simplicity, for your readability. So yeah, it depends what IDE you use, or do you use some, I don't know, Vim, or do you use some PyCharm or Visual Studio Code? Two comments to this slide. Actually, there is a reason why GIL as global interpreter log exists in Python. First of all, it was simpler to the language authors to introduce some thread management and memory without some mutex, some shared memory stuff like we have in Java, for example. That's why GIL appeared in Python. And Python is not bad language because it doesn't support multi-thread execution. Multi-thread execution still may be used for input-output applications, and Python application might benefit from a lot of threads. So yeah, it's just my additional comments. Just
okay, thank you. I can see true multi-threading be a benefit for anyone in data science using the NumPy if having parallel execution. Any other questions so far? Okay, well, we've got quite a bit of time left, so I'm going to show you a couple of other things. When people submit Python enhancement proposals, most of the time they want the proposals to be accepted. One was submitted hoping it would be rejected right away as Python PEP 666. There had been a discussion on the online forums about how to use tabs and spaces and indentation, and whether we should add different forms or command line switches for starting the CPython interpreter. And the author here got fed up with this discussion and said, look, 4 spaces for indentation, no tabs, and submitted basically a poison pill PEP, which Guido quickly rejected and put that discussion to rest forever. One other noteworthy PEP is PEP 801. PEP 801 is reserved. And if you want to find out why, scan this QR code. If there is no other questions, my name is Kevin. Thank you very much for participating in this presentation.
Hello? All right. Excellent talk. Thank you for giving it. I'm curious to give this to my team of data scientists. Is it possible to get a copy of it?
So you say that again?
Is it possible to get a copy of this to show my team?
I haven't thought of that yet, but I will have a comment placed in the meetup page to show you how to get to give you a link to this slideshow presentation.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
More questions?
I'm not sure if I missed it about that, but you talk a lot of rules, different rules, and how to implement your code. But I don't know if you said something about the linked tools.
Yes.
You said about linked tools, so
Yes.
I missed it. Because I'm not a Python developer, but using other language, JavaScript and Ruby, I use it, and I don't care. I don't spend a lot of time checking my code. I just use a link tool, and everything is done after to save my file. So I think it's an interesting tool for any developers.
Yes. PyLint is one of the extensions that can be put into Visual Studio Code. And it shows you in real time what kind of values and types of values are being expected by a function. Yeah.
You mentioned that like it's unlikely that strongly typed Python unlikely to happen because it's by nature dynamic. But actually Haskell does type erasure, and it's well known for its like the type strictness.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Camel does type erasure unless you do pass special flags to a compiler. So Python should be able to do this as well. And in .NET, they introduced dynamics where they mix in dynamic types in a static type system so they can live together. So it's not going to be Agda with dependent types, but static types should be possible. Why is it ruled out?
Because Guido said so. Yeah.
Guido is a benevolent dictator, so he usually explains the reasoning behind his decision. And I believe Python will benefit from static typing.
There probably is a PEP that just explains why Python is a dynamically typed and not a statically and strict type language.
Can you give your opinion on should Python adopt strict typing, at least optional?
My opinion is that Python was originally designed as a teaching language for children to learn. So if you start saddling young people with too many restrictions, so on, it's going to make the language hard to learn, and it might discourage people from getting into the tech sector.
Optional typing like VB.NET, Visual Basic.NET, introduced optional typing. So it can be, if you don't want, you don't have to, but giving ability will make, will help eliminate a lot of errors at design time, at develop time.
I agree. I do prefer strictly and strong typed languages. C++ is still my favorite. I work a lot with JavaScript, but I am also a big fan of TypeScript because it has strict typing as well. And you're right, it has strictness in the typing. You have much fewer errors, fewer bugs.
Yeah. Basic question. What's the difference in Python between a package and a module?
A package is something that is distributed. So a module can be just a single Py file. When you have several modules together, you can package them and publish them and share them on the internet through something like PyPy. You have to create a manifest file to tell the packager which modules are going to be in the package and what to call the package and a few other things too.
That reminds me, I had a second question. What are your thoughts on Julia being adopted like Python is? I know that it's similar in its functionality. Do you have any thoughts?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that. I can't answer.
Maybe the last one. How did you choose the list of these proposals? Why you choose like 801, 20? Why not 255, for example?
Most Python PEPs are really not relevant to Python developers. They're usually minutiae about where to put a comment and where to put a space and how to spell a particular word. And most people don't really care about that beyond this is how it's supposed to begin. Why I picked these ones is about a year and a half ago, somebody asked me to review their Python code. When I started learning Python myself, I did a lot of research. It's all self-taught because I wanted to create the best Python code possible. And this person's code that I was reviewing was nowhere near close to being good quality code. So I gave him some general pointers, helped him out with some of his logic. But it occurred to me that if this person doesn't know all these things about standard and commonly used Python, does anybody else not know these things too? So that's what inspired me to create this presentation.
Thank you.
And as an answer to one of the questions, you said like you prefer strictly typed languages yourself. So in what case would you recommend to start the Python? And just like in my experience, so when I discovered Python, I discovered like function style of programming, switched to like F#, Scala, and then Camel. But now I would never pick a Python for anything beyond like tools that I'm going to use myself and not going to show anyone. So is your view different? Would you use a Python for any large project versus like something strictly typed and like with type kinds and stuff?
Personally, I wouldn't use Python for a big project. I would use Python for a project where Python is appropriate. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I was given a Raspberry Pi computer, and I was given a robot tank kit, which is programmable in Python. That's what led me to learn Python in the first place. I was not impressed with the software that it came with, so I set about reprogramming it from scratch. But because Python is the de facto language of the Raspberry Pi, using something like C++ probably wouldn't be appropriate to share with other people. So I stuck with Python for that project.
So something contained. So project should be contained in terms of it's unlikely it's growing scale and start involving like many people and no.
Yeah, a choice of language really depends on the project and the team and the end users. Yeah. There is no one universal perfect language. Not even Esperanto.
A camel.
So thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Really nice presentation. Now, guys, I would like to encourage you to send your talk to us. We have a website. It's called calgarytechtalks.com. And there is a place right there. You can submit your talk. For example, both of talks that we have today were submitted right there. So yeah, so feel free. It's like a space community. Please, it would be great to have a lot of like, as Dennis and as Kevin, like nice speakers for the next edition. And yeah, so that's it. Network time. Thank you so much for everyone to coming. Thank you.